Welcome to the Things of the Stars, Sleeping with Science series. These journeys invite you to slow down, quiet your thoughts, and drift into rest while exploring the wonders of the universe. If you enjoy these moments of calm discovery, support us by subscribing to this channel and visiting thingsofthestars.com. Take a long, deep breath and picture a still night around you. The world is calm and quiet. A gentle breeze touches your skin. Above, faint stars glow against the dark sky. In the distance, you hear the soft chirp of crickets. You become aware of the weight of your body resting, the slow rise and fall of your breath. In this peaceful moment, turn your attention inward, for there is an awareness present, a warm, undeniable sense of being. You can feel yourself here, experiencing this moment. This simple feeling, the quiet inner light of presence, is what we call consciousness. It is the mysterious experience of being alive and aware. Tonight, we will gently explore the science and philosophy of consciousness. We will look at the nature of the mind's awareness, our sense of self, and the rich tapestry of subjective experience. We will drift through the brain's networks that give rise to our inner world, from the echoing loops of neural activity that sustain wakefulness to the hidden storyteller in our mind that builds our identity. We will encounter intriguing questions. What differentiates being awake from truly aware? Why do we have an inner voice that talks to us? And what is the story we tell ourselves about who we are? We will meet some major scientific theories that attempt to explain consciousness, envisioning the mind as a bright theater spotlight or as an intricately woven web of information. We will also wander into timeless philosophical reflections, from Descartes' famous realization that I think, therefore I am, to modern debates about the hard problem of consciousness. This is the riddle of why brain activity feels like anything at all. Along the way, we will gently examine how consciousness changes in dreams, under anesthesia, or with psychedelic experiences, and what those altered states reveal about the mind. All of this will be done in a calm, immersive way, perfect for inviting curiosity while also allowing you to relax deeper into sleep. Right now, as you listen, you are conscious and you experience this moment. It sounds obvious, but it is truly a profound mystery. Consider what is happening. Your ears detect sound vibrations from my voice. Your brain processes the words, and somehow you are aware of it. You do not just process information like a computer. You have an inner experience. There is a private, subjective feeling accompanying the process, a sense of what it is like to be you hearing these words. The philosopher Thomas Nagel famously described this as the essence of consciousness. An organism is conscious if and only if there is something that it is like to be that organism from the inside. There is something that it is like to be you. There is a quality to your sensations and thoughts. In contrast, we presume there is nothing it is like to be a rock or a machine following a program. This felt inner aspect of the mind, the redness of red, the ache of a pain, the sound of crickets blended with the feeling of night serenity, is what makes consciousness so enigmatic. From the outside, you are a biological entity with a brain composed of billions of neurons. From the inside, you are a conscious self, experiencing, feeling, thinking. How does mere matter like the tissue of your brain create the immaterial feel of a conscious mind? This question cuts to the core of science and philosophy. In 1994, cognitive scientist David Chalmers dubbed it the hard problem of consciousness. It is the challenge of explaining why and how physical brain processes produce subjective experience. We can imagine a brain doing complex computations or controlling behavior without any inner feeling at all. Yet in reality, there is a vivid movie playing in the theater of our mind. Why should that be? Why are we not just unfeeling biological robots reacting to stimuli without any inner life? The hard problem asks, how can the firing of neurons, little electrochemical events, give rise to the taste of chocolate, the color purple, the feeling of love, or the sound of a lullaby? No one yet knows the full answer. It remains one of the greatest scientific mysteries, one we are only beginning to understand. But tonight, rather than be frustrated by not having a final answer, we can marvel at the wonder of it. Recognizing the mystery can itself be calming. It reminds us that being conscious is in a way a natural miracle, an intimate magic of simply existing and feeling. Consciousness is not all or nothing. It has levels and components. Think of the difference between when you are in a deep, dreamless sleep versus right now being awake and listening. There are degrees of consciousness. In neuroscience and medicine, it is common to distinguish wakefulness and awareness as two key dimensions of consciousness. Wakefulness is the state of being physiologically aroused and alert. In other words, being awake rather than asleep or in a coma. Awareness, on the other hand, refers to the content of consciousness. This is the subjective experience of having thoughts, perceptions, and feelings. A person in a deep sleep or under general anesthesia is neither wakeful nor aware. A person in a coma or vegetative state may have periods of wakefulness, where eyes open with basic cycles of alertness, yet show no signs of awareness. By contrast, someone in REM sleep dreaming is not wakeful, as the body is asleep, but may be highly aware within their dream, experiencing a vivid but internal world. In our everyday conscious life, we have both wakefulness and awareness. We are alert enough to respond to the world, and we have a rich inner experience of that world. We can imagine consciousness as a sort of lamp that can be either on or off, bright or dim, and can illuminate different scenes. Wakefulness is like the power supply. If the lamp isn't plugged in and turned on, no light of consciousness shines at all. Awareness is like the scene that the lamp's light reveals, the particular thoughts, perceptions, or imaginings present in the mind at a given moment. Sometimes the lamp is dim or flickering, as when we are drowsy, groggy, or under sedation. Sometimes it is bright and clear, as when we are alert and attentive. And the scene revealed might be the outside world when we focus on our environment, or an inner landscape when we daydream or imagine. This simple metaphor helps us separate being conscious in general from the contents of consciousness. Your brain maintains consciousness through a complex interplay of networks. Even right now, simply being awake involves widespread activation, keeping your brain in an aroused state. A region in the brainstem called the reticular activating system sends stimulating signals upward that are crucial for wakefulness. It acts like an alarm system that keeps the cortex, the thinking part of the brain, alert. Deeper inside, the thalamus acts as a relay hub, continuously interacting with the cortex in loops. Signals reverberate in these thalamocortical loops like echoes, sustaining. Neuroscientists believe this reverberation helps generate and maintain the state of consciousness. The thalamus is sometimes likened to a light switch or gate. When it is strongly connected and communicating with the cortex, consciousness is on. If that communication is disrupted, say by certain anesthetic drugs or injuries, the lights go out and awareness fades. Even when we are wide awake, our degree of awareness can fluctuate. We all know what it is like when consciousness becomes clouded, perhaps when we are extremely drowsy or just waking up. General anesthesia is a controlled way to turn off consciousness for medical surgery. Under anesthesia, the brain is not inactive, but its normal communication patterns are altered. In deep anesthesia, the brain's activity becomes more fragmented and less complex. Different regions stop talking to each other in the usual dynamic ways and instead fall into more localized, simple patterns. Studies using brain scans have shown that during anesthesia, the brain's functional connectivity decreases and becomes more constrained. It is as if the harmonious orchestra of brain networks has broken into isolated sections that no longer play together, resulting in no unified conscious experience. When the anesthetic wears off and normal interaction resumes, consciousness boots up once more and awareness returns. So, the level of consciousness depends on the brain maintaining a certain kind of organized, complex activity. But once that basic light of awareness is on, what appears in our consciousness can vary widely. Sometimes our consciousness is filled with the external world, like when you are engrossed watching a beautiful sunset or listening intently to music. Other times, especially in quiet moments, our consciousness turns inward to daydreams, memories, or an inner commentary. This brings us to the fascinating topic of the inner voice and the sense of self. As you lie here, you might notice a voice in your mind that isn't the narrator's voice from this audio, but your own. Perhaps it is observing that you are getting sleepy or wandering off to some other thought. Maybe it is quietly commenting on these words or visualizing the scenes being described. This voice inside our head is often called the internal monologue or inner speech. It is that stream of verbal thoughts many of us hear silently throughout the day. It is as if a part of our mind narrates our life, almost like a storyteller recounting events and feelings. What is the purpose of this internal voice? Far from being just mental noise, it actually serves many important functions. Psychologists note that our inner speech helps us hold information in mind and reflect on it, almost like talking ourselves through a problem. It helps us plan and simulate future scenarios. It aids in self-regulation, offering scolding or encouragement in response to our own actions. It allows us to remember and recount the past, and indeed to construct a personal narrative. This is the story of who we are, stitched together from memories. One researcher poetically called the inner voice a Swiss Army knife of the mind for its versatility in thought and emotion. In short, to know ourselves, we often rely on talking inwardly to ourselves. Now, close your eyes for a moment if you like, and bring to mind a favorite memory from childhood. Notice how you re-experience it in your mind. Perhaps you picture the scene, feel the emotions associated with it, or maybe even hear echoes of voices or sounds from that time. As you recall this memory, you recognize it as part of your life story. There is a sense that the child in that memory was you, and the person recalling it now is also you. This continuity and identity across time is what we often refer to as the self. One might distinguish between the simple feeling of selfhood and the more elaborate concept of self each of us builds. Psychologists and philosophers sometimes describe a minimal self versus a narrative self. The minimal self is the direct, moment-to-moment experience of being the subject of consciousness. The narrative self is the story we construct about ourselves, our memories, beliefs, and the sense of enduring identity that extends from our past to our anticipated future. Our brains actively construct this narrative self, and a key player in doing so is the default mode network, or DMN. The default mode network is a collection of interconnected brain regions that become highly active when our mind turns inward. When you quietly introspect or let your mind wander, these areas light up. The default mode network is sometimes called the brain's mental autopilot or resting state network, but do not let the word rest fool you. It is during these restful moments that the brain is intensely busy processing internally. One of the DMN's important functions is believed to be creating a coherent inner narrative. Essentially, it weaves the threads of your experiences into the story of you. Think of the DMN as a storyteller in your head. When active, it might replay memories, project ourselves into hypothetical futures, or mull over relationships and identity. It performs what one neuroscientist dubbed selfing. It constantly generates a sense of self by integrating past, present, and future. It is selective, highlighting certain memories while forgetting others, drawing connections to maintain a consistent storyline. In doing so, it gives an illusion of a singular, unbroken self. Some thinkers go as far as to suggest that this narrative self is essentially a kind of fiction. It is a useful, constantly edited construct rather than a fixed core essence. It does not mean you are not real. It means the idea of who you are is created by the brain's narrative processes rather than being an immutable soul. We are, in a sense, the stories we tell ourselves. This perspective aligns with some ancient philosophies which say the self is not a permanent entity, but an ever-changing process. Modern neuroscience gives weight to that idea. Damage to or changes in the default mode network can alter one's personality or sense of self. On the flip side, practices like meditation are known to quiet the default mode network. Experienced meditators often report a diminished sense of ego or a feeling that the boundary between self and world has softened. Interestingly, the DMN is also strongly affected by psychedelic substances, which leads us to another fascinating window into consciousness. Brain imaging studies have found that under classic psychedelics, the normal behavior of the default mode network is significantly disrupted. As a result, the usual tight communication within the network disintegrates. Subjectively, people often describe this as a dissolution of the ego. The usual sense of a separate self breaks down. One might feel at one with the universe, or feel that the boundary between self and world has blurred or vanished. In other words, without the DMN performing its usual autobiographical storytelling and self-boundary maintenance, consciousness becomes more like a free-flowing ocean without a center. We have talked about the components of consciousness, but a deeper question looms. How do brain processes actually produce conscious experience at all? Scientists and philosophers have proposed various theories to bridge the gap between brain and mind. Let us calmly walk through a couple of the major theories of consciousness. We will keep it gentle and intuitive, using simple metaphors so you can follow along as you drift in and out of thought. One influential framework is called the global workspace theory. This theory likens the mind to a theater stage. Imagine inside your head there is a little theater. On the stage of this theater, various actors can come into the spotlight. These actors represent the content of your conscious awareness, such as a thought, a perception, or a memory. Backstage and in the dark audience seats lurk many other processes. These are unconscious thoughts, sensations that you have not noticed, and background routines. Most of the time, those stay in the dark. Now, attention is like a spotlight that shines on the stage. When a particular piece of information gets that attentional spotlight, it becomes brightly lit on stage, and that is the moment it becomes conscious to you. The other processes in the theater can now all see what is on stage. In other words, once something is in the spotlight of consciousness, it is broadcast globally to many brain systems. Different parts of the brain can now synchronize around that content and use it. This explains why, when you attend to something, you can report it, remember it, and act on it. Consciousness, in this theory, is very much an active, moving process. It is a sequence of moments where different contents win the competition for attention and are briefly illuminated for the rest of the system. Another prominent theory is integrated information theory, or IIT. IIT takes a different approach. It starts with experience itself and tries to infer what physical properties a system must have to create that experience. It proposes boldly that consciousness is integrated information. In simple terms, for a physical system to have conscious experience, it must be a system that integrates information in a specific way. The components have to influence each other such that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. This sounds abstract, so let us use a metaphor. Imagine a choir singing in perfect harmony. Each singer by themselves has a voice, but when they sing together, they create something richer that no single voice contains. Harmonies emerge from their integration. In IIT terms, the choir has integrated information in the song that individual singers alone could not produce. Now imagine a group of singers who are not listening to each other at all, each singing their own tune independently. That is low integration. IT says a conscious system is like the harmonious choir. It has lots of parts influencing one another, binding into a single entity with its own holistic patterns. In essence, consciousness requires not just information, but information woven together into an integrated whole. The more integrated the information, the richer the experience. The philosophical perspectives on consciousness are also rich. René Descartes, back in the 17th century, famously doubted everything except the existence of his own mind. He concluded, "I think, therefore I am." By this, he meant that even if he doubted the reality of the external world, he could not doubt that something, the entity doing the doubting and thinking, existed. This line is often taken as a celebration of the certainty of one's own consciousness. As a listener at bedtime, you do not have to choose a side in these debates. It is perfectly fine to simply float on the current of these ideas, letting them wash through your mind. Each theory is like a different story we tell about the mind. A spotlight on a stage, an orchestra of information, a higher order reflection, or a narrative spinning forth. Perhaps each contains part of the truth. Let us gently consider how consciousness changes in different states, because exploring these can be both fascinating and reassuring. Dreams are a perfect example. Every night, if you fall into REM sleep, you enter a bizarre theater of consciousness conjured entirely by your brain. In dreams, you experience sights, sounds, and emotions, yet your eyes are closed and the outside world is shut out. You are conscious, but not conscious of your actual surroundings. Instead, you are conscious of a virtual world generated internally. Dreaming consciousness has been called a third state of consciousness, distinct from normal waking or deep sleep. It is a reminder that consciousness does not always need the outside world. It can be intensely creative and self-contained. Hypnosis and meditative trances are yet more variations. Under hypnosis, people can enter a highly absorbed, focused state where they may be less self-conscious and more open to suggestion. In meditation, practices that cultivate mindfulness also modulate consciousness. Adept meditators often report a deep sense of present moment awareness, with less chatter from the inner voice. The brain can learn to down-regulate the narrative-generating networks and instead emphasize networks related to attention or body awareness. This produces a peaceful consciousness that is vividly aware yet quiet in thought. As our gentle journey through consciousness comes to an end, let us take a moment to appreciate the simple fact that we are conscious. From the perspective of physics, we are collections of particles, atoms obeying laws of nature. From the perspective of biology, we are organisms, the result of millions of years of evolution. And yet, here we are with an inner universe of sights, sounds, feelings, and thoughts. A world that is ours alone, and yet similar in many ways to that of others. Consciousness is at once the most intimately familiar thing and one of the most profound enigmas. Scientists are gradually illuminating pieces of the puzzle. We have learned that when you attend to an image or a sound, neurons in far-flung regions will synchronize and share that information. We have found that a tightly interconnected thalamus and cortex seem necessary for the lights of awareness to stay on. We can point to the default mode network humming in the background, crafting the tale of you. All of this brings us closer to understanding the mechanisms of consciousness. Yet, there is also a childlike wonder that remains when gazing at the mind. Perhaps it is all right that some mystery lingers. After all, consciousness is what allows us to experience beauty, love, and curiosity. It is the canvas on which all of life's moments are painted. How incredible that the universe, through us, is not only existing, but also experiencing. The atoms that form your brain were born in stars billions of years ago. Now they form a thinking, feeling being who can listen to words and contemplate their meaning. In a way, when you look up at the night sky or ponder yourself, the universe is gazing back at itself through the lens of your consciousness. As you settle down and let yourself drift towards sleep, you can feel gratitude for this natural gift of awareness. Even if science has not fully explained it, we each get to live it. Think of consciousness not as a problem to be solved tonight, but as a phenomenon to be savored. The softness of the pillow, the sound of these words, the images that float in your mind, these are the currency of your existence. When we fall asleep, consciousness does not vanish entirely. It gently recedes from the external world and perhaps ventures into the realm of dreams. And when we wake, it is as if a small light kindles again and the world appears once more in that light. Feel the weight of your eyelids, the slowing of your thoughts. You might notice that your inner voice has grown quiet, words dissolving into a drowsy haze. Maybe little dream snippets already dance at the edges of your mind. This transition is itself a fascinating shift of consciousness from the structured narrative of waking life into the free-form theater of sleep. You are a traveler moving from one form of awareness to another. Tonight, we traveled from the mysteries of the self to the vast theories of the mind. But now, there is nothing more to solve or analyze. You can let all these ideas simply fade into the background. What remains is a calm, comforting awareness of being here, breathing. In this moment, you are the content of the cosmos, a unique point of light in the great tapestry of existence, quietly glowing as you rest. Feel free to let go of the day's identities and narratives. You are not required to be anyone or do anything right now. The narrator in your mind can take a bow and exit the stage. The theater lights are dimming. There is nothing to fear in this darkness. It is the gentle darkness of a safe, quiet harbor where your mind's boat can anchor for the night. Consciousness itself is winding down to a peaceful, low ebb. If thoughts arise, they will float by like soft clouds. If feelings emerge, they will do so gently, like distant waves lapping ashore. The essence of you, the observer at the center of experience, can simply watch over this process calmly until even that watcher quietly falls asleep. In a way, as you drift off, you are practicing a little bit of what we discussed. You are loosening the hold of the default mode, letting the sense of self recede, allowing consciousness to relax its focus. This is a natural, healthy step. Our minds need this nightly respite, and consciousness happily transforms into the diffuse, restorative state of sleep. When you awake tomorrow with the return of the bright, focused awareness, perhaps you will carry a tiny bit of wonder about the fact that the light of consciousness switched off and on again. But for now, there is no need for any active wondering. Just be. Be conscious of the heaviness of your limbs, the softness of the bed, and then even let that awareness melt away. Trust that your brain and body know the way to sleep, as they have many times before. Good night. May you sleep deeply and soundly, and may your consciousness find rest and gentle dreams. In the great mystery of the mind, one thing is certain. You are here, you are alive, and that is a beautiful thing.